When programming for key populations, the starting point is the locations where specific communities come together. For instance, this could mean sites or spots where key populations inject drugs, solicit clients, or cruise. The specific tools to microplan at these locations include A. Site load mapping, and B. Site analysis. The location-specific tools work best if programmatic mapping and population size estimation have already been done. The program team then goes to each of the sites where key populations frequent and uses the location-level tools to validate and collect information for planning outreach. However, these tools can be also used to map and estimate the population size where such data is not available. The first location-specific tool is site load mapping. For site load mapping, the outreach or program team requests peer educators or key population volunteers at the site to draw a map of the location where key populations congregate. The map details the streets, buildings, and any major features of the location. In the map, the sites and spots where key populations can be found are marked, and then details of the number of key population in each site is documented and differentiated between normal days and peak days, with peak days being days like Friday or Saturday, when a higher number of key populations congregate in that site. Site maps can be simple, where a map shows where the site is located and how many key populations are there in the site. But they can also be very detailed, even using color codes to differentiate vulnerability levels, like in sites where there is higher violence, and even using removable stickers to represent key population movement between sites. Ideally, these maps should be developed every 6 months to offer the best representation of key population sites in the location.
There are so many things that we need to consider when developing a site map. The first thing is we need to make sure that we have adequate information around the sites. We need to understand what key features are within that location. We need to know what health facilities are around, police services, basically all structures that are very important for key populations. We also need to understand where the hotspots are located. But beyond that, there are also other elements that need to be thought through. Peer educators are developing this site map. Do they understand all the information that they require? This process needs to be done by a peer educator, someone who is doing the work on the ground and not anyone senior within the program. But beyond that, when developing this site map, we also need to be very cautious of the fact that this is very sensitive data, because you're basically listing places where you're going to find key populations. In some country contexts where legal environments are very difficult, this could actually jeopardize the whole program if we're not careful. So in how we keep the information after we draw it, after we develop it, is also very important. So 3 things: security of the information that you're developing, information about the location that you're about to draw, but also making sure that it's peer-led, it's a peer educator doing the work. So the first challenge that is there is when you're developing a site map, you're talking about a hotspot that could change anytime. So today it's active, tomorrow it's not active. You're talking of a site perhaps that today has got younger sex workers or younger key population. Tomorrow the dynamics change. So the biggest challenge that is there is the changing nature, the changing dynamic of hotspots. And how we navigate around it is to make sure that the process of doing this site mapping is done at least at minimum every 6 months, so that we have updated information and updated maps, and we are putting into considerations the changes that are happening within the hotspots.
After site mapping is complete, what follows is site analysis. It builds on the information on the map with the goal of planning efficient outreach. Site analysis considers 5 aspects at the site level that would affect outreach. Typology. This is the classification of key populations into categories based on settings in which they solicit, cruise, or use drugs. Partner or injecting volume. This refers to the number of clients that key populations visiting the site have, or alternatively, the number of injecting episodes for people who inject drugs. Age. Key populations below 24 years are categorized as young, while those 25 years and above are identified as older or mature. Day. This considers whether key populations frequent the site on a daily or a weekly basis. Time. Takes into account the hours in which they frequent, morning, afternoon, evening, or night. After the site mapping is complete, the outreach team, together with peer educators and key population volunteers, analyze the site to understand its profile to plan outreach. This analysis begins with population size estimation for the site, which can be derived through the size estimation exercise or the site load mapping exercise. Once the site population size is known, the team lists out the typology of the site. For example, if Site X has an estimated 50 female sex workers and the typology of the site is club, then through the tool, the teams list out the number of sex workers among the 50 that are high, medium, or low in partner volume, the number of sex workers who are young or mature, the number of sex workers who visit the site daily or weekly, and finally, the number of sex workers who visit the site in the morning, afternoon, evening, or night.
Looking at the site analysis, really, it means that we want to try to understand each and every hotspot individually. Remember, the site map was more of a blanket. But now within this blanket, you want to pick one of the hotspots and analyze that particular site. Most of the key populations undergo probably a lot of violence. And it's through site analysis that you're able to tell this is the characteristics of this particular hotspot, and probably violence is prevalent within this particular hotspot, and maybe we need to have a paralegal person just to respond to the needs. And then also the other thing, also just to understand the frequency in terms of how often do the peers visit these hotspots and at what times do they visit these hotspots. So when that is considered, then also you're able to tell which is the best time to reach out to the peers within these hotspots. But at the same time, it also helps you to really prioritize, so that you prioritize those hotspots that have concentration, the high numbers of key populations, and also prioritize now the individual key populations who probably are really at high risk. For instance, you might find a transgender woman who may also be injecting drugs, among other overlapping risk behaviors that we see across.
Site load mapping and site analysis are the first set of microplanning tools. They offer an important foundation for outreach planning and, most critically, help location-based planning and monitoring.